So in a world where ravenous gaming communities who love these franchises, let's face it, more than their own family probably, here's finally the highly anticipated adaptation for one of the most influential horror games in the past decade. I remember hearing rumors non-stop about this one being made for, at the very least, the past 5 years. So after countless sequel games, multiple comic books, I think, have there even been novels? Has there been a show? Why do I recall seeing the promotion for a show at one point? It was probably made by the fans, and oh god, the amount of stuff the fan base has made. Do not Google FNAF fan art. You, stop it. Yes, you, stop it. Stop typing it right now as I'm saying this. Your innocence will be reset and it will be lost all over again, I swear. I mean, I'll make an exception for Chica's fine ass. Whoa, cut that. So Scott Cawthon, the creator of these games, has been a busy man, to say lightly. So it was inevitable for this to be adapted into a feature-length film. We all knew it was coming. So the most important question of the day, how was it? Was it worth the near decade of Chica erotica fan art? Well, let's grab ourselves a slice of pizza and our way into this. Five Nights at Freddy's. Troubled security guard Mike Schmidt gets a job opportunity from a mysterious figure to look after Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria to soon find out there is more to the restaurant's animatronics than meets the eye. And of course, we're going to get into some horror spoilers up in here. I mean, how can we not? So I think first it's important for all of you to understand at least my history with this franchise. I mean, I don't know if you could really tell, but I'm in no way a hardcore fan who bases my entire personality or my entire mental condition on this franchise. I am simply a casual enjoyer. The first game came out, good god, was I in high school? That is when this franchise had the most of my attention, because at the time, the whole concept of a haunted Chuck E. Cheese was fresh and it was creepy. Some of the most infamous channels at the time that helped introduce me to this franchise were, of course, Vanoss Gaming, RIP to the OG Vanoss crew, we do not speak about that. Of course, Markiplier, and of course, the almighty MatPat from Game Theory. So the sequel games would continue to keep my interest due to the surplus amount of creepy backstory. The lore of FNAF, as memeable as it is to say that, it felt intentionally planned out from Scott Cawthon. But I think by the time, I think it was Sister Location came out, it was really starting to lose steam for me. At that point, it just became another one of those yearly franchises like Call of Booty or Ass Creed, where a sequel will be pumped out every year or so. I mean, why? I'll give you a hint, it runs at $1 billion. So after kind of scouring what other people thought of this movie all over the web, it seems that only the hardcore fans are allowed to give valid points on this movie. This is for the fans. Any wretched outsiders new to the IP or even filthy casuals, imagine being a filthy casual, are just simply unworthy to comprehend the deep, rich lore that is FNAF. I feel like such a fucking... I'm actually losing brain cells making this right now. Talk to me when the open world FNAF game drops. Thankfully, this movie is more so a retelling of the story arc from the first 3 games, to my knowledge, with all different story aspects of all 3 games kind of conjoined into one singular location. So because of that, I was able to keep up with the story and actually catch all the references that occurred. So even though I was on track with what was going on in the story, I gotta be honest here, y'all, I was underwhelmed and severely disappointed with this one. This movie did perhaps one of the worst things, if not the possible worst thing a movie can do, at least to me, and that is to bore me. This movie was a lifeless slog for the most part. And this is the part where the rabid FNAF fanbase locates my IP address and doxes me. No, go ahead, pause the video. Oh wait. I mean, shoot, the main character Mike had sleeping problems in this movie. Honestly, I felt like I was succumbing to narcolepsy at one point, because I honestly did find myself getting a little bit drowsy at some point in this movie. I really wanted to like it, and with the recent track of video game adaptations being both respectful to the source material, as well as just being fun overall, even to the people who don't even really know the source material all that well, I figured this would have been an easy home run, especially since the literal creator of the games was a part of this whole production. And with a $20 million budget from Blumhouse, who have been able to capitalize on new or unknown IPs these past few years now, their most recent other hit this year also being about an evil animatronic going rampant, I just feel like there's just no excuse for the script to be this lifeless. Some people are saying it was dumb for the script to go the kiddie route for half the time while taking itself too serious the other half. But honestly, it was the silly aspects that I wanted to see more of. I would have rather the script go big and dumb than take itself so serious. I know it's a hard balance to strike because this has been a franchise definitely catered to a younger audience, but when you actually take the time to familiarize yourself with the context of what happens in these games, it's actually a pretty upsetting concept. It's about children being murdered at a location location where they are meant to be safe and have fun by a serial creep looking to raise an army of vengeful spirits. I would say this is the perfect franchise for younger audiences to get introduced to horror storytelling. So let's specifically go over why this movie was so boring to me. So first off, let's discuss the animatronic in the room, the PG-13 rating. Because this is indeed a franchise that caters more to kids, like I said, I understand why Universal pushed for it. Why cut off a good portion of your target audience by forcing them to come watch it with an older sibling or relative? That's not what I would call a pro-gamer move. Obviously, I'm sympathetic to the older audience members that wanted them to go with the hard R rating. Then I took a step back and I revisited the games. And I noticed something that I actually am not really seeing anybody really talk about when discussing this movie. This whole franchise was actually never in your face gory to begin with. All of the horror elements that happen in these games, they happen off screen. Anytime you, the player, gets jump scared attacked, it cuts away to the game over screen, and then the game tells us what happened instead of showing us. Even with all the exposition that happens in these games, the violence is very much muted. Everything that happens that would be considered violent would actually be pretty grotesque and horrific to watch. Children get their heads bitten off. Children are lured into the back rooms of a restaurant and killed to then have corpses being stuffed into animatronic suits for them to rot away. All of it is shown in those 8-bit segments, a la Atari art style. So because of that, it's really held back from being a lot more impactful. It's so lacking in on-screen violence that this was considered shocking back in the day. So it makes sense for the movie to imply it as well, instead of showing it. I'm trying to sympathize with the studio executives? What the hell is wrong with me? It still doesn't mean most of the kills lacked any sense of style or impact. There's been many cases of PG-13 or even below rated movies still showing violence and going around that R rating. You usually have to be a lot more creative, whether it be through obscure lighting or, more importantly, when to cut away with the editing. There was really only one instance where they lingered on a shot on a wrecked corpse that piqued my gore attention. Every other instance of violence shown just felt so underwhelming. My psychotic side just wanted more. You don't need mountains of blood or on-screen mutilations to get creative with violence. It's even more disappointing because the build-ups to most of these kill sequences are actually pretty creative in some parts, with a lot of subtle moments that you can miss on your first watch. And I think it's those subtle moments that are actually creepier than the scare itself. So let's transition into the creep factor, the spooky factor. Even when there are moments that were clearly meant to build tension, something just fell off for me. I don't know if it was just the composition of the shots or what, but it just felt like I was more so watching a very impressive short fan film, not a multi-million-dollar production. This is one of the cases where I didn't mind jump scares. If anything, I was ready for them and I was ready to welcome them. That is what this franchise has been mostly known for. Even the jump scares were so weak. So many moments they could have paid homage to how the animatronics behaved with their jump scares in the games, but they just resorted them to just doing any other cheap jump scare by just having them pop out of the dark. The biggest disappointment for me was a moment with Foxy in the hallway. Instead of having the perfect opportunity to have him actually run down the hallway like he does in the game, it just resorts to just a kind of a cheap jump cut where he just disappears and just reappears out of the dark, as if he just teleported. They actually had the physical, tangible suits on set. They had actors wear these suits and move around in them. So I don't understand why they resort to just cutting around them. They look incredible. Use them. Slowly getting a bit of a little tangent there. Happy place, happy place. I am a FNAF fan. I am utterly insane. Alright, let's go over the stuff I like. The production design and the costumes, they were fantastic. Some of the best recreations I've ever seen from any live action adaptation. They just nailed the aesthetics for a Chuck E. Cheese lost in time, blended with some modern day arcade charm. It made me feel nostalgic. As for the actual animatronics, when they initially released the promotional stills for the animatronics in use on set, I really thought they were full CGI because I didn't think physical recreations can look this good. Turns out they got the company that made the Muppets to come in and create the animatronic work. The way they move, the way they sound, it was just all perfection. Everything visually speaking was up to standard. Performance-wise, I think the main cast did the best they could with the script they were given. Josh Hutcherson, haven't heard from him since Hunger Games? He made what was really a blank slate from the games, since Mike never really talked in them at all. He made an average Joe with severe PTSD that was thrown into a situation very believable with his reactions. Piper Rubio, I can tell she gave it her all, and sold a disturbed child looking for comfort in either imaginary or unorthodox friends. And of course, Matthew Lillard, how can we not love him? Does he only do spooky movie roles? Is that just like a pact he made with the devil or something? I don't know. By the way, I respect it. He should definitely have that streak going for the rest of his acting career. These main three, I think, all deserved a better script to work with. As for the other supporting cast, I was uncertain at times if their acting chops were up to par, or if the dialogue they were given was just too difficult to get out naturally. They still gave moments that I laughed out loud just due to the WTF nature of it all. I still can't pinpoint if they were intentional or not. That lawyer character though, holy moly. With his 1,000-yard stare, and that one thug who broke into the pizzeria that was just getting chased and was just screaming on the security cams. Those things were just comedy gold to me. I don't know why. They were just so funny. Also, the music tracks for when the FNAF gang was just getting down on stage, they were catchy, and again, they captured the essence of what it sounded like going to Chuck E. Cheese as a kid. Also, some real spooky ambient tracks from the original soundtrack actually enhanced some scenes for sure. That opening title sequence that was made in the 8-bit fashion, hinting some background context with the actual killer, I thought it was great. The Map Pack cameo, I mean, come on, how can we not stan our Lord and Savior? I can only imagine how legendary it would have been if they actually got Markiplier in this. Apparently he was the initial choice to play Mike Schmidt, but unfortunately there was just scheduling conflicts with him. Imagine that reality where Markiplier was Mike. Holy moly, dude, the whole earth would have imploded. And of course, to top it off, the too many to list here, multiple smorgasbord amount of references to the multiple games in the franchise. It was clear that this whole project was made with the fans as a priority, and that's definitely the very least a video game adaptation can do. Well, now let's get right into the nitty gritty, the poopy stuff, the stuff that I just think was an absolute stink fest. Now that I think about it, a majority of the elements that got me excited about this movie do not pertain to the actual viewing experience of this movie when looking at it as a narrative motion picture. Hear me out. Everything with the art design, in the locations, all the animatronics, that is all owed to the games. The characters that bog down this movie are the ones that are mostly important to this movie's storyline, but they aren't really that important in the games. The Karen Ant and the cop are probably the biggest buzzkills here for me. Again, nothing against their actors, but I just did not enjoy or care about their characters. Why was this aunt such a crazy bitch for the younger sister when even Mike said she only cared for the monthly government checks? It can't be that much to screw over your nephew like this, can it? And for the cop character, Vanessa, have you heard of the hit game Among Us? It was clear she was intentionally withholding information from Mike about the restaurant, yet was constantly hot and cold on whether she truly wanted to help him or not. Yes, the father who turned out to be the killer, which by the way was also a super crappy reveal honestly, threatened her to do his bidding, but she drew the line when it came to the endangerment of Abby. Wasn't the whole plan initially supposed to be converting her into an animatronic? Why the sudden and rapid change of heart now? Because you're actually seeing what it's like to see a child harmed? I don't know, that whole change of heart just happened way too quick. It just felt forced and unnatural. Her whole character in general is just frustrating to try and pin down. So her father, the killer, which to no surprise turned out to be Matthew Lillard, it felt half-baked because he had just a severe lack of screen presence. He's there in the beginning and then he just diddles off and disappears and just reappears at the very end of the movie. It just did not feel earned. Even his ending villain dialogue just felt corny, but not in a cheesy fun way, but just as a trying too hard to make reference to the game type of way. I feel like he deserved the most, and I feel like he got shafted the most in this movie. So even with that main cast, of which I didn't mind seeing more of, even they had story elements that I just really did not care for. And it could all be blamed on the script. Mike with the whole aspect of finding out who the kidnapper of his younger brother was, and far too many dream sequences that overstayed their welcome. I probably would have been less annoyed if we didn't keep returning to these dream sequences over and over and over and over again. And if it wasn't just resorting to the same exact setup of him just chasing children to the woods over and over and over again. Goodness gracious. I was just mentally checked out by like the third time we returned to that location. Oh, quick side note, that little blonde kid actor was actually quite good as well. He actually gave a very convincing evil child performance. I liked it. The script somehow managed to make the unlikable characters have too much screen time and had the actually interesting and somewhat compelling characters have little screen time. It felt like it just had too many plot holes or just forced plots that honestly honestly felt pretty amateur. It didn't feel like it was intentionally looking to be corny and fun. It was looking to have that style as if a child wrote the script. It rather felt like a lack of multiple drafts and rewrites. I'm questioning if this is really the story that Scott Cawthon really wanted to tell on the big screen. After creating such a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey confusion of a universe for nearly the past decade. It just felt like a huge mess by the end credits. It's getting hot. Now I know how Matthew Lillard felt. It's so hot in there. I'm gonna get my last thoughts with this thing off. I fully expected there to be a sequel. We all knew it was gonna happen. It was inevitable even before this movie came out. There is just so much source material to make countless sequels on, absolutely. Here's hoping they had the foundation to create a more structurally sound and engaging sequel. And you know what? After spewing all of this, I've just come to a revelation about the whole FNAF franchise. It's more engaging and fun to discuss and theorize about the lore rather than actually play the games or watch the actual story unfold. Now that I think about it, you really are just pointing and clicking buttons in all the games, and if you want to uncover more about the lore in the games, have fun doing some of the most ridiculous, tedious tasks ever devised just to get a convoluted cutscene that you would have been just better off just looking up and watching on YouTube. I remember back when it was just that first and only FNAF game almost 10 years ago. Getting into that rabbit hole of what everyone was speculating about what this meant and what that meant, it was so much more intriguing and paved the way for just so much more creepy stuff and content out there. MatPat's original game theory about the first game gave me more shivers than any of the games or this movie provided. Seriously, go watch that video. It is utterly excellent still to this day. Maybe I'm just jaded and old now. That seems to be the case, and majority of the fan base seems to just really love this movie. I just have to ask if these people really watch many movies, because as a visual narrative piece, this just does not provide enough information for newcomers, nor do I think it provides what longtime fans really wanted to see story-wise. I think it would have been awesome to just have the entire movie take place just in the pizzeria. And you know what? If you want to see a better movie that came out this same year that also is about a broken little girl befriending a killer robot that ultimately goes on a killer rampage, go watch Megan. 5 out of 10, squandered potential with boring characters and an unsatisfying story. What did you all think of the movie? Comment below and let me know. Hardcore FNAF fanbase, comment below why you hate me so much now. Hey, made it to the end of the video and without a single jump scare.